friend trying to sell you to none other than Baron Samedi. I already know what time it is. It's scary story time. And who needs enemies when you have friends like this? We have this girl. Let's call her Sarah. And the friend that tried to sell her, y'all, not only did that friend try to sell her, that friend attempted to unalive her about 3 times. Let's call her Snake. Yeah. I got my snack, so get yours. So Sarah knew this girl for about a year or so. Throughout that whole year of friendship, she started to notice that Snake had a jealousy problem. Like at first, she didn't want to jump to conclusions and be like, oh, she's jealous of me. But actions started to show slowly. Which was a bit weird because Sarah was never the type to flaunt stuff or brag. She's a really private person, so nobody really knows her business for real. However, Sarah was one of those lucky people that really never had any money issue as an adult. And she thanks God every day for it. Her faith was so strong that money would just naturally come to her. But that doesn't mean she went around bragging about it. She was just blessed. And because that was her friend at the time, she would always help her friend out whenever she needed it. She was even helping take care of her daughter up until she was 2 to 3 years old. And then they stopped talking, she cut her off permanently for the story I'm about to tell you. Anyways, you get it. So this particular day, she woke up with the heaviest feeling on her heart. No matter how hard she tried, that feeling was just there and she didn't know what it was. She tried to ignore it and go to work, but it was such an overwhelming feeling that she had to keep calling her husband about it. To tell her husband, something is not right. I have this strange feeling. Throughout the day, too, weird things kept happening. There was these parents that physically tried to attack her. And on her way home, her car literally just died in the middle of the highway. And she almost got into this really bad accident because her car literally just stopped. So finally, after an eventful day, with that feeling still heavy on her heart, she makes it home. She's glad she's home. She tells her husband about it. They pray and they go to bed at the end of the night. And this is where it starts getting crazy because when she went to bed, she fell asleep, right? And when she fell asleep, she got up, left her body on the bed, and her soul went to a cemetery. She doesn't know why. She just knows she went to a cemetery. Her soul went to a cemetery. And when she gets there, she's standing there and she's looking around. From afar, she sees 2 people. She sees a lady and she sees a tall man in a top hat, a cane, and a trench coat. Immediately, she already knew who that was. But she can't really tell who the lady is. Not until the lady started talking and she recognized that was her friend's voice. And her friend said to Baon, I have brought a soul for you to take. Excuse me? And Baon replies to her, I can't take this soul, nor do I want this soul. And Miss Snake seems kind of surprised and offended that Baon said this to her. And so she dares question him. She's like, how dare you refuse a soul? This is what you do. I'm bringing you a perfectly good soul. You can do whatever you want with her, and you're telling me you don't want it? Why? And Baon replies, I can't take her soul. And he raises his cane and points it at her. He says, I do not want her, nor can I take her, so bring me another soul. Bring me someone else. And she says, okay, because it's Baon Samedi. You don't want to argue with him. But the thing is, had she actually tried to bring another soul in the place of Sarah, Baon would have just took her instead. Anyway, Sarah wakes up, right? And she's like, what the heck was that? What the hell? And she wakes her husband up and she explains the dream to her husband. So her and her husband prayed once again. Then they went on about their night. And it wasn't until after the dream, turns out, come to find out, y'all, that same night that Sarah had that dream, Snake went to a voodoo priest to sell Sarah's soul to Baron Samedi. And after she went to the voodoo priest, they did what they did to finalize the sale. She went to the military. Mind you, this is same night. Military. Why did I say military? I meant cemetery. I don't know why that came out. Anyways, she went to the cemetery that same night. Do a ritual at the cemetery to finalize killing Sarah. But to her surprise, Baon denied. The whole interaction that she saw in her dream was actually real. She was literally watching Snake, her friend, trying to sell her. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you gotta stay prayed up. You gotta stay protected. Because Who needs enemies when you have a friend like Snake?
Before I started working, let me share this story with you guys real quick. But this thing happened back home. In 2008, I woke up on a Saturday. That day, my mom didn't really have money to give us the food that we wanted. And I was like, hey, Mom, what are we gonna eat today? She's like, maybe we drink coffee, guys, because I'm broke. I don't have anything to make the food that you guys wanted. I'm like, okay, cool, no problem. And there's a guy I used to play soccer with, but he's my best friend. He used to be my best friend, not anymore. And I called him. I'm like, yo, his name is Pete. I called him. I'm like, hey, Pete, what are we gonna eat today? Because I feel like eating some good food. He's like, you know what? I got you. He told me, meet me at 2 p.m. so we talk about something. I'm like, sure, no problem. I was doing my thing, waiting for the time. When it hit 2 p.m., I went to him. He told me that there's a funeral. We're gonna go to that funeral. And I asked him, who died? He said, don't worry about it. We're just gonna go to the funeral. And I told him that, what's the purpose of going to a funeral? He's like, one thing about funeral now, after the bury whoever died, you go to the family to eat, to get food. They give whatever food you want and stuff like that. And around that time, they were just starting doing that in my country. Give food after they bury the dead. And I remember asking him, are you sure about this? He was like, Brett, go home, go shower, dress nice. We're going to a funeral because I did it. He told me that he did it last Saturday. And he ate a bunch of food and he drank. He had so much fun and he didn't even know the person who died. I'm like, okay, cool, no problem. I went home, I showered, I dressed nice, and then I went back to his crib and we go. While we were going over there, he told me, the first thing that you do, go trying to find out the name of the person who's in the casket. He was talking about the dead. I'm like, why do I do that? He said, because when you go inside the church, you're going to act like you're crying and say the guy name so the family of the dead can see that you're crying. And after that, someone gonna come and talk to you and they're going to put you on a VIP bus that's going to their home where the food are. I'm like, that's a good idea. We got there and I went to talk to someone. I'm like, hey, who's that person in the casket? What's the name of that person? And the guy told me so and so. I didn't want to say the name, but I would say so and so, like an example. And I'm like, okay, cool, no problem. I got the name. I went to Pete. I'm like, hey, the name of the guy is so and so. Now he's like, let's go straight to the casket and we're going to fake crying. I'm like, but how do I do that? How do I fake crying? He's like, I'm gonna have you use my shade. He had a shade. He said, I'm gonna have you use my shade. Act like you're crying. While you're crying, say the guy name. I'm like, cool. I was hungry. I needed the food. I'm like, no problem. I walk up to the casket and I'm like, hey, so and so, why did you do that to us? We miss you. We don't know when we're gonna see you again. We faking it. We acting like we were crying. And after 5 minutes, the mom of the guy who died walk up to us, and then the mom like, who are you guys? And we're like, we used to play soccer with him. We are friend of him, and we just find out that he died, and that hurt her so bad. And the mom like, yeah, I know, and stuff like that. But the mom said he don't believe that his son died in natural cause. I'm like, oh, really? And while the mom was talking to me and my friend, and I took a look. I removed the shit that I had in my face. I took a look at him on the casket, but I can see that tears on his face. I'm talking about the dead guy now. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't say that out loud because I know that I can see stuff, but I was trying to get Pete and the mom attention to see that if they can see that the guy is crying while he's laying on the casket. And I'm like, Pete, do you see what I see? He's like, what do you see? I don't see nothing. I'm like, okay, cool, forget about it. But the guy was crying. I can see tears all over his face. He's crying. And when I turn around, pay attention to that. When I turn around, on the right side, all the way in the back, I saw the same guy who was laying in the casket, sitting with a lady who dressed all black. I was so shocked. I didn't say anything, but I was acting like I was crying. I'm like, this is not a joke. It's time for me to go home. I don't even need the food anymore. I said, hey, Pete, do me a favor. Do you see anything on the right all the way in the back? He looked. He said, all I see, it's a lady sitting in the back. She were all black with a rope on her hand. I'm like, after that, you didn't see anything? He's like, no, I didn't see anything. But I'm looking at the guy in the casket. When I look in the back, I'm looking at the lady sitting down with the same guy, but she had the rope on her hand, and then he tied the guy on her tie. I'm like, this is some scary shit. But while I kept staring at them, I'm looking at the guy in the casket, I'm looking at the lady in the back. She can see me now. That's when shit get crazy. She can see me. I can see her. And I told my friend, you know what? I don't think we're gonna be able to eat this food today. Let's go home. And he's like, bruh, I'm so hungry. I'm staying. You can go home. I'm like, dude, you don't understand. Let's go home. He said, no, I'm not going. I went and sit down, and I was trying to figure out how am I gonna leave this church. And while I was leaving, the lady come close to the door. The lady in the black with the same guy, but I didn't see the guy after that. The lady come close, and she was looking at me, but all I did, I shut my mouth. Because when stuff like that happen in my country, when you see things, you don't talk. And I didn't talk. I went straight home. After 3 weeks, while I was playing soccer, and my friend Pete was talking about the moment that he took me to a funeral and I didn't eat. And I told him that, you know what, let me be honest with you. The real reason why I didn't eat and I didn't stay, I was gonna tell them that what I saw. We were sitting on the bench. I was gonna tell them there was nobody at all behind us. While I was gonna tell them what I saw, someone tapped me like this 3 times on my shoulder. When I turned around, I didn't see nobody. And my friends, they were sitting next to me. They didn't feel anything. They didn't hear anything. I'm like, you know what, guys? Let's talk about something else.
The Dark Side of DoorDash. A true story regarding a girl named Jenny who uses DoorDash in her pastime to make some passive income. Now, Jenny has another full-time job. She only does DoorDash because, she just needs extra help with the bills, especially in this economy. Before this, Jenny has never had any kind of issues with DoorDash. She's always made her money, made good tips so far, and she's never been in any really dangerous situations. One day, Jenny's driving around. It's around 8 or 9 p.m., which is a little bit later than usual than what she usually does, but she has a light bill that she needs to catch up on, and she doesn't want her lights to go off, so she just got to do what she got to do. Jenny gets an order from a restaurant that she's fairly familiar with, accepts it. The tip is pretty well. It's a $20 tip. So, of course, she's in there like swimwear. Jenny goes to pick up the order, but In the instructions for delivery, something is pretty weird. In the notes said, the door is unlocked. When you walk in, sit the food on the table. Although this was strange, she didn't think too much about it. She just know that it came with a pretty hefty tip, bigger than anyone she got that day, so she was just going to do it. The name on the order was a woman's name by the name of Annie. She just assumed that Annie was probably doing something in the back of the apartment, but she'd come and that would be it. Jenny gets to the restaurant. She goes and picks up the food, and she makes her way over to Annie's house. Now, it is a little bit later at night, but she's not thinking too much. It is a fairly nice apartment complex, but considering how late it is at night, there's nobody really outside. Jenny starts heading to the back of the apartment. She reaches the door, and she turns the knob. She opens the door, ready to do what the instructions say. But as she opens the door, she's about to walk in. She sees something at the end of the hallway. At the end of the hallway is a very large man. She knows in her heart that is not Annie. Scared out of her mind, Jenny just bolts. She makes a run for it. She does not step in. She does not put the food down. She still has the food in her hand. She just makes a run for it. Behind her, though, she can hear this man chasing after her. But thank goodness for Jenny, she did not park that far. Her door is already unlocked. She never locks the door anyway for her cars because she knows that door dashing is fairly fast. She gets in the car. Jenny speeds off. But after she speeds off, she takes her phone, she dials 911. She doesn't even complete the order. She dials 911. She's telling them about the weird encounter, the weird direction. She's freaking out. She's panicking. The police come, they inspect the apartment, and what they find is horrible. Not only was there no one named Annie on the lease, but there was no one on the lease at all. Come to find out, the apartment was abandoned. The police then tell Jenny that they've had so many instances of females being taken this way, and that the fact that she followed her first mind and made it out actually saved her life. This was enough for Jenny to contemplate everything about DoorDash. She deleted the app completely and never, ever, ever delivered another order.
I am back with another spooky story, and we are still in Ghana. The dead people or ghosts just walking around in Ghana casually is just a little too spooky for me. You might not want to watch this one at night. We're gonna call the person who submitted this story Etsy. This story happened when Etsy was just 8 years old. So a backstory, her uncle was a serious womanizer, okay? Like he had several women. So much so that he had girlfriends from different regions of the country. And also different countries, period. Including the US, UK, Germany, etc. He got hoes in different area codes. And while all of this is going on, the man was still married, okay? So the uncle, also known as the womanizer, winds up passing away. But a year before he passed away, his aunt actually also passed away. So before the aunt even passed away, everybody already knew that the aunt and the aunt's daughter had issues with the uncle. It was a very tumultuous relationship between the aunt's daughter, and the uncle. They did not get along. Boom, the aunt winds up passing away a year before the uncle does. This is all important. Keep that in mind. So this beef was happening and everybody lived in the same house. So at the time, a lot of kids who were in the family who were close would come over and spend, their summer break with them in the house. So fast forward one Friday afternoon, the uncle, also known as the womanizer, says he wanted to take a trip to Togo. He said he wanted to go check something really fast, and at the time he had a bike that could take him to Togo and back in under 4 hours. So he left to Togo, and some time goes by, and uncle's still not turning up. So now it's actually getting kind of late, and there's still no sign of the uncle. He was supposed to be back in less than 4 hours, so what happened? Etsy's mom is out here calling him, no answer. His wife is calling him, another aunt is calling him, no answer, y'all. And a little bit later that night, unfortunately, they wind up finding out that the uncle tragically passed away in a motorcycle accident. And apparently, he was tossed back and forth by several cars on the highway. This was one of the most used highways in Ghana, so it was quite a lot of cars. After he's been rolled around like a hot potato on top of all these cars, some way, somehow, he miraculously got up and stood on his feet. Despite having all of his bones broken, this man got up and stood on his feet. But unfortunately, he didn't survive as he died a little while after he was sent to the hospital. So Uncle passed, boom. Now here's the tea. Fast forward to the day of his funeral. The kids start to notice that there's a lot of extremely beautiful ladies literally coming into the house. And all of those pretty ladies were looking for no other than the uncle. So Etsy's mother and aunt, who really had the issue with the uncle, they would just walk these ladies into the room where the uncle was laid, basically show them a corpse, and these ladies would just be crying. They were so hysterical. Upon seeing his body, these women were fainting, crying, hysterical. So much so that Etsy's mom and auntie had to prepare taxis for any other women that might just come around and be too hysterical to take themselves home. So boom, it's his funeral, and all these beautiful women are literally coming in randomly and just asking to see him. And when they came in, they weren't necessarily dressed for a funeral either. They came to see that man. And to their surprise, the man is dead. Here's the creepy part. So even after the funeral, the ladies never really stopped coming around. And it would be different ladies every time. Even up until his 1-year death anniversary, women were still coming around asking for him. And each time these women come, they were let down with, he's dead. And without failure, every time they find out that this man is dead, they would have this like reaction and they would just go ballistic. So much so that it started becoming sad and kind of funny to Exy. So the real tea is, come to find out, after the man died, after he died, he went around inviting his girlfriends to come over to have a good time. If you know what I'm trying to put down. So all these women were stopping by either by his funeral or even like a year later because they were literally seeing him and he was inviting them to come over to the crib to come get some. So all these girls is coming over there ultimately to get by a ghost. So Etsy goes on to say, not to mention the night before the funeral when his body was brought home and something very strange happened. While Uncle was alive, unless he was angry, he never called any of the kids by their real names. But this night, he whispered each and every single person that were staying in the house's actual name. He did not leave a single stone unturned. He was whistling people's name, and the creepiest thing that winded up happening was, during all this haunting of people hearing their names being whispered in the house and all, there was a car that was parked at the compound. Well, the car drove itself to the police station. Like, the car got tired of being parked in the compound and decided to go for a drive to the police station. No, this is not a dream. This actually happened to somebody. So when people retrieved the car from the police station, they interpreted the action like the corpse was looking for justice. So they sought out to find out, you know, how he unalived. Yes, it was a motorcycle accident, but was there more to it? Well, y'all, come to find out, y'all, the cause of his death. Y'all remember the aunt that died a year before him that just did not like him? Well, before she unalived, she, you know, left something behind. She did something to that uncle before she passed away that resulted in the uncle passing away literally exactly a year after the aunt had. And come to find out, this whole time, the aunt was a witch. It was nothing they could do physically since there was no physical evidence. So I guess that cleared up the mystery. The aunt was responsible for the uncle. Oh, these families just out here unaliving each other. That's wild. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this story. I thought we were gonna leave Ghana by now, but I ended up getting so many submissions from Ghana. And these stories are kind of good, so I'm gonna tell them. Make sure you follow me on TikTok. If you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And make sure you follow me on Instagram just so that I know that it's real. Duh. And I do love y'all from your